got to give you a foundation on how I got to where I'm getting ready to go with this. I got involved with the UFO phenomenon in 1992. I was on a vacation trip to Alaska to visit my brother in the Air Force. I live in Florida. I would be flying out of Orlando, headed to Anchorage. It's a 10-hour flight to get to Anchorage from Orlando. That's a long time sitting on a plane. I needed something to read, something to, take the time. I picked up the book, I looked at the cover, I thought this got to be science fiction. Turned it over, looked at the back side of this book, read the synopsis on what it was about. Now I'm puzzled. This book reads like a science fiction title, but on the back it said it was real stuff based on real research from what they said was a real event. That book was UFO Crash at Roswell. I could not understand how they could say something was real but looked like a science fiction story. I knew that fine line between reality and fantasy, and I knew that science fiction was just an escape mode that you could get into and drift away into another land, another far-off world, just for a short time while you're reading it. But this book blurred those lines. So I bought it. I said, how can this be? Started the book on the plane. I was up there in Anchorage visiting my brother for about 9 days, and that book started to consume me. I had to finish this book. So every spare moment I had that I wasn't being the tourist up in Anchorage, I was reading the book. When I got home, I had a hunger to know what this UFO phenomenon was about. I had no idea. There was nothing in my vocabulary dealing with UFOs before picking up that book. I wasn't interested in all this weird stuff called UFOs. Didn't follow it on TV, didn't watch it on the movies really, until this book caught my attention. Very good book. Give them guys credit for the way they put it together. But that started me on a quest to find out what this was about. I came across some people in the Orlando area that belonged to an organization called MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network. I went and introduced myself to these people and got to talking with them. As I made trips over to talk with him, being he was local to me, about 45 minutes away, he saw that I was starting to develop a keen interest in this whole idea of UFOs. So he pulled me aside and he says, how would you like to go from just reading about this stuff to maybe doing actual investigations? I said, well, that sounds cool. I said, I can really do that? And he says, yeah. He introduced me to MUFON. MUFON builds up field investigators to go out and be able to handle these sighting reports and do the investigations to build a database that they've been building since 1969 when they were founded. They have thousands upon thousands upon thousands of documented cases in their database. Still don't have an answer to what this is. It just continues. He showed me how I could go through the training to become a field investigator. Very good training, by the way. They got an excellent manual, Field Investigator's Manual. You have to take a test. It's an open book out of the manual, but let me tell you, it ain't easy. But it'll get you educated on how to do investigations. They'll send you out with other investigators that have done this and get you prepared to actually do investigations. What's interesting as I look at this today, compared to when I first started out, my profession has changed over the years, and I'm actually a safety specialist at the Kennedy Space Center. And part of my job is doing incident investigations. Well, it's interesting that some of that training that I've used all these years fits right in the same way you do an investigation. So that was pretty neat, looking at it from what I've learned over all the years. Once I got to investigator status, he said, over in the Brevard County area where I live, which is on the coast, which is where Kennedy Space Center is located. I live right across the river from the Space Center. He said, there's no MUFON chapter over there. He says, why don't you think about opening up a chapter and heading that chapter? Maybe build up some investigators under you, and as calls come in, you can take sighting reports over there. Well, excuse me, but how cool is that? I mean, what other places would you want to be a UFO investigator? Maybe somewhere out in the desert in Nevada, maybe. Roswell, maybe? Kennedy Space Center? That's too cool. Over that area? Do they have activity? That's classified. No, they do. There's people that talk about seeing things all over that area. I worked on a number of investigations down there back in the early mid-90s. But this is where I started getting into the research. First couple of years, it was basically following up on sighting reports. Sighting reports, you get your name out there to where they can come in through the sheriff's department, police department, the newspaper. People don't know who to call, okay, when they see something. But there are a number of people taking calls, believe me. People are always wanting to get on the phone and report something. What you want to do as a MUFON state section director is get your name out there to where they'll give you that call, and you can go out and respond to it, because they sure don't want to do it. You know, they're busy doing real crime and real issues that need, you know, be taken care of. So if you decide you might want to do something like this, I'm giving you the way it works. Another thing that MUFON asks you to do is hold monthly meetings so that the public can be made aware of MUFON's presence, and you can talk to them and educate the public on the whole phenomenon of UFOs. But we were still doing UFO sighting investigations. Well, how many can you do before you finally get to the point where you realize you're chasing your tail? I said, MUFON's got thousands upon thousands of investigations under their belt since 1969, and they still don't have an answer. Well, something I was starting to see in my monthly meetings were people coming in claiming these odd experiences, saying that they had been in contact or had been through this abduction experience, saying that they had met these entities, whether they liked it or not. Well, we started looking at this and got to thinking, you know, we're chasing lights in the sky. These people come into our meeting and sitting right here at the table said that they've been in contact with the things that are driving the things we're chasing. Excuse me, shouldn't we be talking to them? They're front line, not chasing past history events where you show up hours later or days later to try and do an investigation. You can talk to the people that have been there. So we did. We started taking their stories. We started talking to them and letting them share with us what they've been through. But one thing that scared us in the beginning was we realized these people, they weren't happy people. They were like the people I just read about. They were having tough times. They were troubled. They thought because we were UFO investigators, we had all the answers. We didn't have any answers. We were just wanting to hear their stories, see if we could find some answers. But we wanted to be very careful not to cause any more damage to these people. So we studied, the group that I was with, myself and my investigators, we started focusing on studying every aspect of the UFO abduction experience that we could get our hands on. All the major players that have written or talked about the experience and the research. We consumed it before we started into this, so that we knew what we were dealing with. We wouldn't be caught off guard by surprise. We even had women investigators working with us, because a lot of the details you get from the female experiencers are very personal. Some of them you don't even want to hear, more or less trying to get them to share them to get the whole story out. So it was good to have some female investigators with us. Some heavy stories started coming out. But our findings, working in the abduction field, and this is when CE4 research was formed, because MUFON really wasn't working with the abduction experience at the time. So we formed a separate entity, CE4 research group. I made sure that we were all MUFON investigators, so that we had a standard that we can do this by, okay? And hopefully that would be looked at later on as we documented all the research. We were all trained to do investigations, to do the research, and to put it together. All we needed was enough time to get it together to share it, which is what we're doing here. So now we've gone from UFO investigations to abduction research. But there's another aspect that we started to recognize. there seemed to be a spiritual aspect to this phenomenon. A lot of the people coming into these meetings had some strange ideas that I'd never heard of before. When I first picked up that book in 1992, I was a full-blown agnostic humanist. God had no presence in my mind. Neither did UFOs. I mean, I was all about just surviving and working every day. Okay? I thought because of that, I would be very, very objective in my research. Well, as I started listening to these people and started seeing some kind of spiritual connection, I started to recognize I got this hole that feels like something's missing. And as I started listening to these people, and in the studies that they were involved in with the New Age and metaphysical studies, I started to see that it and the UFO phenomenon were intertwined. And I needed to find out what that intertwining was. What was that connection? How is this spiritual connection tied in to this UFO phenomenon? So I went and started researching this New Age and metaphysical studies. Over the next 4 years, I was a practitioner of metaphysics. I was consuming everything I could get my hands on with metaphysical New Age studies. What was even really cool is I was converting Christians to the New Age and metaphysical studies because they had no clue what they believed in. It was amazing. So I've had an opportunity to see the UFO phenomenon from a total godless humanist point of view, perspective. I've also had an opportunity to see it from New Age metaphysical eyes. 1996, I'm working with 2 specific cases that were very, very troubling. It was absolutely wearing myself and my fellow investigators down. The oppression coming from these 2 cases was just incredible. We had never experienced anything like this. It happened to be that one of my female investigators at the time happened to be my girlfriend. She was a professing Christian, but working with us in the research. I told her to keep her Christianity to myself, and I'll be fair and keep my New Age stuff to myself. So we got along fine that way. Agree to disagree. Just love each other. So that was cool. But she started seeing this oppression and seeing how it was affecting us as researchers. And she was seeing something that we weren't seeing. And she pulls me aside one night and she says, you know, I'm watching what this is doing to you guys, and I think there's something here that you're not recognizing and you have no idea how to control or work with. And I think you need some protection.